Oh, it says live.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's how we know we're live. Cool. All right. I don't know if we need to give. I don't know how many people are going to end up watching this at any point, so I don't even know how much introduction to give as to. I guess we can. I can. We just give like short introductions, and then I'll just talk about maybe the typings we've received in the system that we're going to be talking
Right.
about.
And kind of maybe like a recap, because this is all like prefaced on the conversation that we had earlier.
Right. Yeah. So I'm super protist in the CT forum. Name's Garrett in real life, and I guess this is Adrian. I guess you can introduce yourself how you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Adrian, Ciencian on CT. That's it.
Cool. Um, so we've been typed in CT as SETI, which is not in MBTI ESTP, and Adrian's been typed as TiSe, which is not in MBTI ISTP, but it's still talking about the same, not the same functions, but it's using the same terminology for the function. So SETI is still extroverted sensation, introverted thinking, and TISE is still introverted thinking, extroverted sensation, or extroverted sensing, whichever one you want to call it. So I
Right, and we're
guess,
both double introverted.
right, I'm like double introverted and then with a splash of extroversion because that's my first.
Right.
Yeah, first. If I was double introverted, I guess I'd be, I don't know how that would work. Uh, yeah, so that's, I guess, a little bit of background. If you want to, if you need more background, I guess, on cognitive typology, which is what we mean by CT, you can go to cognitivetype.com and look up a bunch of information there, I guess, if you want. Also in this, I guess we don't really need to go into development levels that much. I guess that's kind of, we don't really, we can introduce it
Right.
if we come across it in the conversation, I guess.
Right. I mean, I think it says it just by saying we're both double introverted, but are your first function is SE. I think that already says it all. TI and then you're SE, but you also have TI
Right.
developed.
Yes. Um, yeah, I guess that's fine for now. So I think you might be better at giving a recap because you're the one who brought up the idea of giving a recap. So we've
Right.
already had a conversation, talked about a lot of stuff for a pretty long time. So I guess Adrian can give an overview of what that conversation was like.
Well, the biggest thing that I remember is that there was this chasm between us, that there were some things that I considered knowledge that you couldn't process because the way you think about things is linguistically, uh, and the way I think about things is visual, linguistic, but also something else, right? This just sense. I think that's like the most basic way I could call it, just sense, a sense of knowing something. And also we were also like, well, what you couldn't conceive of knowledge, right? That's not linguistic in some sense.
Yeah.
And so that was the biggest difference, and that's what we were going to talk about now. Like after I thought about all of that.
Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, because people think in different ways. I guess common observation is that some people think. I guess because it's just people mean different things when they say I'm going to think about this. So a lot of people or some people think in words, some people think in images, some people think, just different ways of people thinking. And personally, I think like I'm speaking right now. And that was another thing that we noticed is that speech for you is a bit, there's like, it's not a one-to-one. Because for me, it's like my thoughts are, I'm just externalizing my thoughts when I speak. And for you, you have to translate almost what's
Right.
going on in your head into some sort of linguistic form.
Right. Because I guess mainly I think, I mean, that's what I found out when I started talking to you. Mainly I think visually. And also there's this thing, I guess it's in CT is technical glitching, where, I'm trying to get out an articulation, an idea, and I get caught up by how to articulate it. So that's part of it too. So it's the visual aspect that I have to you know, go think about it first and then say something back. While you can think and talk at the same time.
And I wouldn't even say it's like at the same time. It's more just that it's not like I'm thinking, it's not like I'm doing two things at once. I'm just doing what I do normally aloud. So it's not even
Right.
like it's not even like uh, it's not like it's like I'm thinking in words here and then I'm saying the words here. It's not that there's no disconnect,
Right.
you know.
And I can't just, you know, if I see the images in my mind, I can't just say describe the images. like I think what's funny is that I did find Elon Musk doing this at one point in his Joe Rogan interview about
Mhm.
AI, where at some point it did seem like he was just describing an image that he had in his mind instead of articulating what he meant. Uh, he was just like, "Oh, there's a tree and there's people with phones." So he's like seeing a vision and he's trying to
Yeah,
just describe the vision.
yeah, and it's not
Um,
a actual picture. It's not like a
right,
detailed like landscape that has that's it's like a collection of images that are kind of
right,
not really not even images because maybe that gives people the impression that it's like a phone, an actual phone, and an actual. It's like the precursors to images, I guess. Kind
right,
of might be a good way to
right,
put it.
right.
And it's just like a collection of them, and maybe they're centered around an idea. This will make me think about how Jung talks about ideas and his definition for them in psychological types. I don't remember the exact definition, but it sounds a lot like that, I think. And I read that and I was just like, well, I don't get this. I don't understand what he's talking about. But I think you'd probably have a better appreciation for it.
Uh, well, the images, I don't remember that much the definition that he put, but
Was
what I
either
remember is
images or
that
ideas? Images or ideas, one of the two.
all images are ideas. I remember image, and by image, he it was kind of weird because he used fantasy, image, idea, like they were all connected somehow, and I couldn't really um, tease them apart. Um, but mostly, what I've seen is that his idea of image, from what I remember, it's still very. It's not the way I experience it. It's not. It's not. There's movement in my images. It's more. It's it changes. It's not just one single image that is
Yeah,
dynamic. It moves from vision to vision or image to image, and it's seamless. Um,
yeah, because I think there's something. It's like an unconscious perception. It's like something that's um, not articulated yet or not understood yet, and it's only really being perceived through these like pseudo not ideas but pseudo pictures or videos or stuff, something like that.
right.
It's like a sense, right? It's like a
Yeah, it's definitely caught up with that too, because
yeah.
I mean, trying to tease them all apart, I would say it's first. It's mostly sense, this knowing sense, this informational sense,
Mhm.
uh, and then it's visual, and then it's linguistic, then it's articulated by my thoughts. Um, but most of the time, I don't need articulation. I don't need to talk to myself about what I'm seeing.
Yeah, you get it.
Yeah, you just get it. But I think that in itself is a bad thing, because when I was trying to articulate with you, like I found how crippling that is. Like, yeah, I can't just rely on that, because then you can't really. I mean, what's the point if you can't really articulate what you're seeing? If you just get it yourself, that's
I
fine.
see
But
what you're saying. Yeah.
so it's good to. I think It's good to talk about it, at least with myself, to try to see what I'm seeing and try to really encapsulate it into a thought that can be brought forth outside.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's like just, I don't know. I don't think this is exactly what you were saying, but I wouldn't say it's like bad that you think that way. I would say more that it's like, I mean, it's how you think, but you can develop it, so you can use it in real life or in the outer world more, I guess.
Right.
You know, um,
And that's the
yeah,
thing. I don't really get the I don't really get the opportunity to use it uh, in real life. Um, Most of the time, it just happens. And, it's very natural. It just happens. I'm here. I'm chilling, and you know, in 5 seconds, I'm just thinking about something else, like drifting off,
mhm.
um, and thinking about these things. And it's not just about ideas. It, it's about. I mean, I would say everything. It could be anything really. Even like about my job, or something I experienced. It's like some. It takes like if I go outside and I experience something, I still have to extract some kind of something out of it. Some kind of synthesis from it, some kind of knowing out of it. Like even from our conversation, uh, like I can't just like leave it at that. I have to like process it later, because the other thing that we talked about is that, um, when I meet new people, uh, the way I act towards them is I notice it now that it is very unconscious. I don't have control that much over it.
Right, right. We did
Um,
talk about that.
so because of that, I can't just process it in the moment. I have to like, oh wait, what? So I have to like run through the whole thing. Like, oh, what did I say? What did I mean by that? Why did I say that? Or something like that.
Oh, yeah, you didn't get that deep into it, but I did understand what you were saying last time. Because for me, like it's just like I know, like, first off, like when I say something, I know what I'm gonna say before I say it. And it's not like I've thought it out before, but I think that's might be a bit of what that sense that you have is, because like I know what I'm gonna say before I say it, but it's not like I thought through the entire sentence. But I'm still aware of what the sentence is gonna be. Like nothing
Right.
comes out of my mouth that surprises me, really.
Right.
So
So is that how you relate to it now then? Like in the process of articulating, that you're aware of what you're gonna say without saying it, because once you say it, like you said, I'm already doing what I'm thinking in my mind and putting it outside. So you're aware of what you're gonna say,
yeah,
but it hasn't been said.
right.
It comes out as you're talking,
Um,
like the linguistic part.
the linguistic part, yeah. I haven't like I know I have a sense of what I'm gonna say, and maybe it's like it might even be linguistic. Like I know the words, but they're like the words aren't like present at full consciousness in my head when I say things. Before I say them, as I'm saying them, or as I'm thinking in words or speaking in real time. That stuff is full consciousness. But before I actually say whatever it is I'm going to say, then I guess that's pre-conscious. I guess that's a good word for it.
Then I think that's the part that I relate to. Then, like, where it is more, I take more time with that part
Yeah, because you're sitting
before
with
it
that.
becomes,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's kind of like your
um,
home, not home, but that's like natural to just kind of be in that space of like It's hard for me to come. It's almost probably impossible to come up with a good word for it because it's not linguistic. You know, I don't have, and it's not like a picture, so it's like I can't come up with a good word for it. I can't come up with a good, fully conscious way to describe it.
I think,
But I think I do know what you're saying.
awareness is already, I think, a good word, but it doesn't capture the
Because there's different types of
information.
awareness. Yeah, there's
Right.
different types of awareness. So this is exactly where we got in. Was the type of conversation we got into last time with trying to, for me, trying to describe what it is you experience, and I think it's just kind of not necessarily hopeless, but you know, it's I don't think it's, I mean, maybe it is hopeless, might be a bit negative, but it's like it might just not be possible because I mean, unless I can actually do it and it's like I get into it a bit more, then maybe I can understand it, but until then it's just me trying to imagine something that's I've never experienced. So
Right. Well, as I was saying earlier, for me at least, the fact that there is like a word for these kind of things. Like some people, I don't think this word captures like the whole experience of it. It's just some small part of it. Uh, but I guess in the spiritual community or whatever they call it, clear cognizance. Um, and I didn't know that before, but I guess that was a good way uh, to understand it better. This experience that I have, and then again another in a research journal, other under. See, I'm getting caught up again. Just seeing um, under many different types of these um, these types of experiences that people say they have, which some I can't even fathom myself either. Like some people say they can. Well, you've heard of the people that can feel other people's emotions, right? So that's also part of information that's not linguistic, not visual. It's a sense, but it's emotional. I don't have that, obviously. Uh, that would be crazy. Um, but there's all these types of experiences, right? And they're called anomalous information reception. Um, and that was a good way to describe it too, because it is information. Like maybe
yes,
knowledge wasn't the right word because for you knowledge is linguistic. Uh, but information at least is more. It's more. It could be more abstract where it doesn't have to be linguistic.
yeah, I think information's that's a good. Maybe I mean, we can try to come up with like good language for it. But and I think information would be a good place to start with that. Um, because I definitely maybe this is it. Maybe I have like a sense of what it is, and maybe that's kind of all it is gonna be. But it's not really. It's like a parody. I think it's not entirely authentic to I think your experience because like for me it's like I see like just like kind of like a dark background and then kind of like these somewhat visible but not like they're just shaded darkly, they're just like almost there, I guess, images of like maybe different objects or whatever. And
Mm.
that's just the parody I have in my head of it. I don't think it's necessarily accurate. um yeah, I forget exactly where I was going with that, but
So, are you saying that the images in your mind are they're vague, but they're also colorless? Like they're no.
I was I mean, like I said, it's a parody. Like one of the objects I'm thinking of right now is a hammer, but I'm not thinking of like I'm thinking of like a JPEG of a cartoon hammer. You know, it's not that articulate or developed. It's just
Right.
uh, and it's just like that, and then just like a bunch of then like a couple other icons or something. That's just what I'm thinking
Right.
of. But it's not. But I'm not like there's nothing underneath that, which I feel like there is when you do it.
Well, another way you could kind of think about it. Um, when you see things, when you see objects, um, does the essence of them ever appear to you? Like I guess that's where I would end it. Like,
I
do you
think
see
I understand the
essences?
idea of an essence. I don't think I really get that though. Like when I see stuff, I just see it. It's pretty like I see it clearly. But and when I guess when is this in the moment that you kind of get the sense of the essence of the object, or would this be after when you're kind of
Uh,
reflecting on it later?
it depends. It depends how invested I'm in the present, like in the moment. If I'm in the moment, by the way, for me, there's two in the moments. There's in the moment where you forget yourself. It's just visceral experience. Nothing is set apart or distinguished. It's kind of like
Flow.
moment to moment, yeah, moment to moment flow.
Yeah, you
And
might want to look up. That's like a it's like a I guess a somewhat rigorously defined term. It's like this. It's we can talk about it later, but keep saying what you were saying.
right, I was saying that there's two in the moments, and in the one where it's just flowing in the experience, nothing is distinguished, nothing is apart, everything is one whole moment. uh, I can't. I don't think about the essences of things at that. Like I'm just living. Things are happening. But there's also another in the moment that I have, is when I become aware of myself, right? Like it's not just flowing experience anymore. It's like I'm aware that I'm experiencing something, and like the moment is still. It's like I'm contemplating the moment. Uh, Time slows down, and you get to experience the moment more for what it is. Uh, like like because then you're trying to understand the meaning of this moment, right? At least for me. And then I can be aware of the essences of things. Like it's like a short pause maybe, and then the things that stand out, I can see the essence of something and its meaning to me and to the world and to like the future. um
I would say one
or
is maybe more is the first one you were talking about more active, and I don't mean active mentally. I mean active physically.
it's more active externally. I
Yes,
wouldn't say
sure.
physically.
Oh, not
uh
physically.
yeah, because I mean I deliver food to make money on the side, and when I'm on my bike, and I'm it's very physical, right? um but I can be writing and still be in my mind, still be thinking about things.
Right. I wasn't saying that it's necessarily physical, but is it whenever that first one is on? Is that like when you're doing some physical activity or some
mm,
activity? I guess.
some activity, not doesn't have to be physical.
Right. I'm trying to because when you were describing it, I was thinking about this. Have you heard of like what a flow state is? Come across that term
Yes.
before?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking of. I don't know if that fits the first one better or the second one, but that's what I was thinking of. Like a flow state, like when
I think both. I think if it's both. because I've heard of it. I think from what I remember, the flow state is that you're again lost in the moment, using all of your resources of your brain to figure stuff out or to be in the zone or whatever.
Yeah, and there's not. Yeah, there wouldn't necessarily be one flow state. So yeah, it definitely could be that as well. That's just.
I think this is. Oh no, finish.
No, I think I was done.
Oh, I was gonna say this is a flow state. Maybe it's not as involved as the two I just mentioned, but it's still a flow state because I'm kind of like lost to the experience between me and you in the conversation. Like conversation is flowing, and I kind of have to like, flow with the moment and with the experience of it. Like if I may, yeah, even when articulating or getting out a thought I'm not saying it's fully involved, but it's definitely like, as I said before, it's some part of it is not conscious and some part of it is. I would say when I'm in the moment in both of those states, it's kind of like I'm not conscious of it. Because for me, consciousness, like what it amounts to in the end is like I'm aware and I'm in control of what is happening. And in both of those flow moments, in the moment stuff that I just mentioned, I'm not in control of it. And right now, I'm not in control of it either. I'm not that much in control of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like half and half or something.
Yeah, I think flow, I think is described as like, it's not like either completely on or completely off. There's like degrees to it, as far as I can remember. But yeah, I don't think I'm in that. And I think this is not necessarily, what was I going to say? I don't know, just that like I don't think I'm in a flow state right now, or experiencing flow in a very, because I feel like I'm pretty in control. Like I'm pretty in control. I'm pretty aware of what's going on. I'm like consciously making points and stuff like that. So maybe it's just not for me and it is for you, which might be perfectly, feasible, I suppose, or possible.
Well, what I related to the part that it's not conscious and the part that isn't flow, I would say is my extroverted feeling or my articulation or something like that.
Yeah,
like that's the part that I'm not in control of. That's the part that isn't flow because I'm just like
articulate
here, right? I don't know what's gonna come out of my mouth.
It's really interesting.
I know what I'm thinking.
That's because I don't know how many signals were seen on your extroverted feeling.
Maybe like one, I think.
I had like 2 or something, maybe 2, maybe 3, but I don't know. It's if that's what it is, because I think I'm pretty in control of what I say and what I like in social situations and stuff like that. It's not like I don't experience it as very unconscious, I guess. I don't think.
Oh man, for me, for sure it is. I remember one time when I noticed it, right? Before I knew about MBTI or typology, I noticed it, that I did this a lot where I was getting drinks with people after a class that I had. And I don't know what led me to say the things that I said, but I was like just saying things just to get on people's good side, right? Like some girl was talking about have I read any Mexican authors now, and like I knew the name of a book, but I've never read it. So I just said, oh yeah, this this person, and then like some other guy, he was trying to
Oh, you
find the
didn't
name.
sorry to interrupt, but you didn't necessarily want to do that, right?
I
You
didn't.
weren't like, yeah, you weren't like, you didn't make that decision yourself, is what you're saying.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Just making sure.
And then another guy was like next to me was talking about this Shakira song, and I remember where that song was in the album. I don't listen to Shakira all the time, but I know this song, and I somehow knew the album, and I mentioned the album, and he was like, "Oh, you listen to Shakira?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like I'm a Shakira fan or something. So I just said it
Interesting.
for like just to not find this harmony but it's not thought out, right? It's just
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
flowed. It just flowed.
It's just like a reflex or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I don't do it, but I understand it. Yeah, I'm trying to think of moments, maybe because if we both are supposed to have, maybe we have different levels of FE development, but if we're both, because as we talked about last time, like the conscious unconscious isn't really a dichotomy as much as it is a spectrum, as far as I understand it. So, like, I'm trying to think of something which is more unconscious for me that I kind of just do without really trying or without intending to. It's hard for me to think of stuff like that.
And when people, because this is interesting, because for me, what I thought being developed and conscious is that you let this side of you take over, right? Like let it flow, let FE flow, because the times I get awkward, for example, let's say awkward or shy or nervous, and my wife calls me an awkward turtle, um, is when I don't know what to say, when I don't know what to do, right? Uh, my mind doesn't bring something forth that I could just say or do to connect with the person or something like that. That's when I'm awkward, or when I don't feel, for some reason, I just don't feel like that side of me just doesn't come out. And so what I thought that development and consciousness is that you let that side of yourself, just don't even think about it, just let it flow, just let it through. And the more you talk to people, um, the more you exercise it, the more aware you become of that flow, and the more you can control it,
Mm-hmm.
the more comfortable you get.
That makes
I
sense
thought
to
that's
me.
right. Um, but if it's a spectrum, how does
I
that
would
work?
say that's still a spectrum because I mean it's a spectrum, but there's like ends to the spectrum. Like you're going from this side to this side. No, and you're maybe there's
But
not
you,
ends. That's not a spectrum, I guess. But it's like
well, because I did it in reference to you, because you say you don't have these moments, these unconscious moments where you say things that you didn't mean to say or anything like that.
yeah, I've always been in control of that as far as I can tell. Like I've
And that's what I'm trying to get to.
yeah, because we're both supposed to have FE unconscious in similar positions in our hierarchies. So it's yeah, I don't really know what to make of that. Or at least like unconscious articulators, right? Which might have something to do with that.
Right.
It's articulation, it's communication, it's well. I'm trying to think, is like maybe it's. I was trying to think if maybe it's another function, but I don't know what else it would be.
Well, the way I noticed it too is that, let's say I'm talking about an idea, right? And I noticed it too before cognitive functions and all that stuff. When I'm talking about an idea or trying to, let's say someone is saying something, right? And I'm trying to correct them. This happened a lot in school because I was in a school where they used the Socratic method of teaching,
Oh,
where you sit around in a table, right? And you basically you discuss the book, and it's kind of like it's a dialogue, and you get to question people based on what they're saying. Um, so in that environment, I suffered a lot, obviously. Um, but I noticed that I would start thinking about an idea, try to get it out. It might have been an idea that I already thought about, or that I'm most of the time if I'm talking, it's because of ideas that I've already conceptualized, I've already brought forth in my mind, and it just takes me getting it out. So usually, so I would try to articulate the idea, right, and I would go into my mind, and I would not look at the person. Usually, it's because I'm responding to a person, right? So I wouldn't look at the person, and I would say something, and that at that point there is no. I'm not concerned of the person's feelings or how they feel about it, because for me it's truth. It's like I'm saying something true, and that's what matters. So when that would happen, I would say it, and I would be looking off to the side, or it's dark, and I'm just thinking. By dark, I mean dark in my eyes. And when I would look back, I would see the reaction, and sometimes it would be surprising. Uh, like they would be caught off guard by me or something, because I said something and they didn't like what I said. Um, so that I noticed that for me too. Like, so there's this time when I'm articulating ideas, when I'm saying something that I can't be interrupted, that when I look at the person, that they have a reaction, because I wasn't aware of how they. It's not like I'm tracking their feelings or emotions as I'm talking. I can't do that at the same time. As I'm talking about an idea that I think is true, if that makes sense.
Is that the qualifier for it? Is that you can do it? You can't do it then, but you can do it in other instances.
Right. Like right now, when I was trying to, I guess it depends. If I'm not invested into the truth of the conversation, if it's just a conversation that we're having, then at that point, I guess that's the unconscious part takes over, where I'm just where I'm just saying things really to connect with them.
Yeah, I guess. I think for me, when I'm in conversations with people, and I don't really, maybe I just don't really engage in conversations that aren't really. I definitely don't engage that much in just like what's the term? Just like just pure socialization, where it's just like, hey, make a joke, and we make a joke, and I say something, and then you say something, and it's pleasant or whatever. I don't like. I don't really get involved, I guess, in that sort of exchange. Yeah, that's what I think. I think I don't really like. That's not like something that switches on for me. Like it's not ever like not
Well,
ever something I
usually,
notice myself doing or notice myself not doing. And by not doing, I mean like doing unconsciously. Um,
I take meeting. The reason I think it happens. This is like before it happens. I think this is just a preconception that I have, is that I take any person, if they're talking to me, like I just take it as a as a notion that they're saying something important, or like, why is this person talking to me? Like, it has to be something special or interesting for them to, I'm minding my business and someone's talking to me, or I'm I'm outside, and well, I guess the part with the people and the drinks is that it was related to class, and I was doing film, and networking, getting people together to collaborate is a big thing. So maybe that was subconsciously in my mind, and that's why I said the things that I said. But nevertheless, like, there's other times where I'm just minding my own business, um, and I just have these special interactions with people. Uh, like it's never just like, oh, a silly moment. I guess when it becomes like that, when it's just like, oh, let's just have like this silly moment and we're joking and it's just socialization, that's when I get awkward because I don't know what is happening. But like, I don't talk to that many people. So when I do have an interaction, it feels so special when it's happening. Like a homeless man asking for a pen. He sees me reading what was I reading? It was like Heidegger, What is Knowledge, I think. And he sees that I'm reading, and then he recommends a book for me, a homeless man. He recommends Viktor Frankl.
Man's Search for
The
Meaning.
title? Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah. Exactly. And that really helped me out later when I was, in depression. Or this girl is looking for an apartment. I'm typing my paper for class, and she just starts talking to me, and she starts asking about my sign. Like, I'm Sagittarius, and she's like, "Oh, you're a fire symbol," and then we keep talking, and then she says this thing where I'm like, "Oh, you're talking to me like you've known me for years." I'm like, "Well, that's weird."
She said it or you said it? It's a bit of a detail.
She said it.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just that it's all, it's all.
I
like,
might have missed what she said. It's no big deal.
Oh, she just said that I'm talking to her like I've known her for years.
Huh.
And I think that weirded her out, and then she just left. But that was like a crazy experience for me. That was like, wow, what the hell?
It's weird because she started the conversation too.
Yeah. Yeah, she was just socializing, right? Like she was just trying to kill time until she has to go see the people for her apartment that she's getting or whatever. But for me, every interaction has always been special in some way. Like even recently, I was riding on my bike. It's not even that special, but for me it is. I guess that's more abstract because the guy was just complimenting me on my bike and my backpack, but it felt more than that. It felt more meaningful than that. And maybe that's just my subjectivity, right?
That meaning thing, that's also associated with NI in some, I guess, circles, you could say. The same, like significance of stuff, I guess.
Significance of experiences. Because meaning is also like TI thing, right? Based on SeTi. TI wants to find the meaning of things. That's what I remember from the profile, the behavioral profile.
I remember a lot from the behavioral profile. I don't really have like a good. This is another thing I noticed about myself. Like if I think about the like any data set that I've come across, like the TI profile is a good example. I can't extract out like the gist. I remember everything like just bit by bit. I can remember a word here, this paragraph, this picture, but I don't get like a sense of the whole thing. That's maybe the essence thing you were talking about. I don't really get the essence of stuff from researching. Like I've been researching like typology for a while, and I still don't have like a good. Like I couldn't tell you like about the gist of a certain function. I can tell you about how different sources describe different functions, but I couldn't really say like, oh, generally speaking, it's about this. I couldn't really do that.
I used to be really good at what you're describing, where I could like think about the details of certain ideas or certain I wouldn't say data sets, details of books or ideas, that I would like correct people on. It's like, no, you're wrong because he says this here, and in this page or whatever.
Oh, okay.
But I think more and more I've been really good at extracting like just the very, very general meaning of something. I don't know.
Yeah, just more differences, I guess.
But that's I think that's a fault though, because for me I relate it to memory, because when I was talking to you last time, I could remember the general meaning of this book or this idea, but the details matter when you're articulating. So that's why I made a conscious effort to, when I said I was processing things and reading about things, I made a concerted effort to remember the details, to actually structure the ideas instead of just this amorphous meaning.
Right. Yeah, amorphous. Yeah, yeah. I guess. Yeah. I like, again, like I said earlier, like I wouldn't. I mean, you're calling it a fault. I'd call it more like an area for like. It's just like it's balance, I guess. Maybe a bit of imbalance or something, but like it's not like the presence of it is itself detrimental or unhealthy. If it can be balanced by whatever its opposite is, right?
I mean, for me, it there's definitely a point where I started not giving a shit, basically, of structuring thought.
Mm.
And it dealt with a life experience, right? That altered me. And I think this is interesting because I think it relates somehow to uh, the TI myth of the void, or that problem of knowledge that you were talking about. Because when knowledge is uncertain and you're trying to purge anything that is not true, which I did like religiously, basically, you get really obsessed about structuring your thoughts, right? Because it matters so much to you. It matters so much to me. But at some point, at a significant point in my life, I guess it wasn't that long ago, I stopped giving a shit. And I wasn't aware that I stopped giving a shit until now, when I talked to you again. I mean, when I talked to you last time. And then I consciously did it again, like structuring my thought.
I
But I
think,
thought that was an interesting experience for sure.
yeah, I think I like, in terms of not giving a shit. There's like, that might be like another, like you like, it might be a function that you're using that kind of like you stop developing or stop valuing a bit.
Right.
I think that there's some resonance there with I don't know exactly with what though. In terms of just trying to think, like when I was trying to think, maybe I can just kind of go through a bit of history here. When I was like, this isn't really not. I don't really know what it is. I was gonna say something about how when I was in my freshman year of college, I was making like a concerted effort, kind of, to be like more social and more outgoing and stuff like that. But I didn't really end up getting, like, nothing really bad happened as a result of it. But I at one point I was just like, I'm not. This isn't really working. So I stopped trying. I stopped giving a shit. I started not giving a shit a bit about being this kind of, not necessarily like cool kid, but just kind of with it socially, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Not trying to necessarily go out and like interact at every single opportunity, or be, I guess, cool. No, I wasn't trying to be cool. I was just trying to be social, I guess is a better way to put it. But I think I think there might have been a moment there with me where I kind of stopped I started not giving a shit with regards to that stuff. Because it kind of went up as I graduated high school. I was just like, I'm going to be this kind of more social person. I was like, maybe not.
Nothing bad happened, but it
Well,
wasn't what you expected, maybe?
I don't know. I was it kind of almost got out of control, maybe, because I'm out of control for me, not out of control by other people's standards. I was feeling like obligated to interact with certain people when I'm invited, and like one of these times I was invited to play a pickup basketball game, and I was just like, I gotta play well because these people like invited me to play, and I gotta like go get this rebound, and I don't really, even though I'm not so sure about just running in, but that's what you're supposed to do. I was very like kind of should oriented, if that makes sense. And I was just like, no, and this was kind of like how I was kind of operating to some extent. And I went in for this rebound, and this guy's elbow like came down on my nose, and it kind of messed it up a little bit. It's still a little bit messed up now, not visually, but just like internally, just very subtly. It's a bit off center. But I was just like, never mind. I'm not gonna feel obligated or to meet other people's expectations, or
Right.
it's kind of like that's kind of how it's set off a bit.
Well, that's I mean, have you connected it to FE, like this experience? Because it does sound a bit like FE, like
it does, yeah.
Expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never had a problem with that. I guess maybe there's the difference between JI, right? Even though you have a high TI influence, right? Like for me, I never had the like meeting the expectations of some of other people. I felt like my expectations are even higher than other people's, right? So you work on yourself. Like that was my, I don't know what to call it.
Standard or goal or
My
something?
directive.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
I'm working on myself. I don't care about other people. Like I used to say that, like, oh, I hate other people. I don't care about other people. But that was only when I was in college, because, man, like talking to people and trying to listen to everyone's ideas and trying to get whatever's here outside. That was annoying. That put a strain on me, because it was like, I'm just not getting it out, and it was frustrating that people wouldn't understand or something like that. Especially because I'm like, oh, I'm working so hard. Why isn't everyone working so hard?
Sounds very
like trying to understand this idea. What the hell?
very Jedi.
So yeah.
What was I going to say? I was something about. Yeah, I never really had. It was a couple things maybe. Like I never really. It wasn't like that. Wasn't I don't even think even before that I was even really that focused on like building myself up or self development, and I still think I'm not that focused on that right now even.
And yet, though, like you have this. What I would say, that I envy, that you actually got to graduate in what was it again?
Brain and cognitive sciences.
Yeah, right. You got to graduate in that, and now seeking a career in that field. Like
maybe
that is self-development. That is a kind of self-development.
It is. I'm not maybe because I think the self-development you're talking about is more about like. Maybe I'm looking at it because I think of it more as like growth, or
externally or internal, like growth,
personal growth.
personal growth. I see.
Like you see, like I think that's a bit of a distinction, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
But I would say in that respect, even though JI is supposed to be focused on this, like,
I'd say I've done
this
more
growth of the
JE
self,
growth. I'd say I've done more JE
right?
growth. I'd call it as more JE because I'm giving myself like resources and like I guess credentials or whatever.
Yes,
That's
I
like
can see that.
external stuff. I'm not really like in terms of developing myself as a person. There's been less of that, I'd say, and even less now. And a very simplistic way I think about that, I can think about that, is like, and this is just like something that because you mentioned that like you're more interested in understanding typology in order to understand typology. Whereas I'm more, and this is something else we talked about last time, whereas I'm more interested in understanding typology in order to understand myself.
Right.
And simplistically, I really just, there's this kind of desire, motive, or I guess desire to kind of see that as just like, well, that's just PE versus PI. That's just like an observation that keeps coming up. It's just like, you're trying to learn about the outside world, you're trying to learn about yourself. You know, that's, I don't. Then nobody really says that's what PE versus PI is, but I part of me wants it to be that simple, if it could be, you know.
Well, this is one of the things that interested me about your question because it's like, what else is there to learn, like, about me? Like when I think about myself, there's something about the self and identity that doesn't really, it just doesn't go there. There's no substantiality to it. What I was going to say is that how am I more focused on self growth by JI if what I'm focused on is still something external? Ideas are external or internal, whatever
Right, I
way you
call
want to
that,
look at them.
yeah, I call that PE. And I'd say, but the thing that you were talking about earlier is what I would call potentially JI. When you're like, oh man, I gotta develop my. It's like both of them because they can act together almost, you know. So it's the, and maybe they're not really existing in isolation, but I would say that the JI is potentially just the desire to improve yourself, and I guess that can also be JE. But
Right.
it's like the refinement versus the. It's like when we get into the actual more technical definitions, it's like refinement versus, I don't know, growth maybe, like purification versus whatever the other word is for JE. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
But I would still say though that it's not something, I didn't work on myself, like as a person,
So
as
what
an
was,
identity.
sure. So what was the because you were saying something about
I didn't try to
standards. We
refine
were talking
myself.
about standards. We were talking about standards. And what
Right.
did you just say? Actually, you said something about find yourself.
Right, that I didn't refine
Refine. You
myself.
said said
I try
refine.
to refine ideas, refine my worldview, refine my prospects for the future, like what I wanted to do, and whatever I thought was myself, not without ideas, just me as a human being. I just referred to that like, oh, this is what I value. This is what is interesting to me. This is my identity. This is what I refine. That is me.
This external idea, right? Or this
Right, right,
external stuff.
right. And it's not until later when I focus more, or even like recently, like maybe like a year ago or something, that I started more focusing on myself and refining myself, right? Like the usual idea of what working on yourself is, like emotionally, um, personally, like trying to find out what is really driving you and your desires and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I call that. I mean, my instinct, not to say this is anywhere near anything I've ever read or come across or whatever, but my instinct is to call what you said, like your instincts and learning more about yourself. That last part I would say is more PI than.
I see.
That's just the interpretation scheme that I play around with, not necessarily anything that I would advise you to take to heart. But I think the part you said before about working on yourself, that I would say is more, because the model I have, a model that I've played around with that I've kind of not really developed, but just maybe thought of, is like you've got do I have paper? Not really. You've got like I guess you can, and Michael Pierce talks about it this way a bit too as well. You're either like kind of shaping the outer world, and that would be JE, or you're shaping yourself, and that would be JI. It's like very simplistic, and nobody's really talking about it like this, but this is how I kind of like to look at it sometimes. And then
You said shaping yourself as JI?
Yeah, like if you're trying to like become a better person, or it's not really necessarily accurate at all, but that's just kind of how I look at it.
See, for me, it's so interesting because becoming a better person sounds so external, right? Like, because for me, becoming a better person means stop being so isolated at home, and actually go to be a better person is go, talk to your sisters, talk to your mom, be more open with people, work out. Do you see what I mean? Like, that all sounds very FE external stuff.
Right. And
that's working on myself.
Yeah. Like I said, like this isn't like I haven't like come across this anywhere else, and I don't really necessarily think it's accurate, but it's just an idea that I have about this stuff. It's just kind of like, because the argument I would make for that is that you're working on yourself, sure. I wouldn't say it's working on your inner world. I would literally describe it as working on yourself, and yourself not as in like an archetype of the self, but like the person that's like sitting right there, like you.
Right.
Versus what I would call JE is like, I need to fix this problem in the world, or I need to help this person, not because that makes me a better person, because that person or that object or whatever out there needs to be fixed or helped or assisted. I don't know. It's just the idea. It's not really that developed.
I mean, I do have that too. I feel like, for me, in my mind, they're intertwined, right? Because why would I work on bettering myself if it's not to, at least in my mind, to do something in society, right? It's so intertwined for me that it's so hard to tease apart.
I understand what you're saying, I think.
What is it? It's the same.
I think I understand what you're saying, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just that you're saying that, like, well, why would I? Like, you're saying, maybe you're not saying that one's above the other, but you're kind of saying that they're linked. And I do see that, too, because that's kind of like how it might work, maybe. Like, because you can push against the world for a while, and then you can realize, wait a minute, I'm not able to do this. I'm not strong enough. So then you go push on yourself, develop yourself, and you go back and push on the world. You're like, hey, it's moving now. So then you can,
exactly.
Maybe this is an idea. I've also, another thing I was toying around with since our last conversation was like the idea of like different function locations in the hierarchy, like modifying the use of the functions, kind of like B's archetypes, like for the positions. Like maybe, and socionics has this too with like function positions, like how different functions are gonna, like extrovert intuition, let's say, or whatever you want to call it in socionics, isn't going to manifest the same way in any two types identically, because it's going to be modified by the functions it's next to, but it's also going to be modified by its position in your stack, how you use it. And socionics has this interesting idea. I guess early on, the founder of socionics had like this interesting idea that like the functions that are supposedly called unconscious nowadays, which would be like in a way to say it in sociology is that either your conductor or revisor functions are like conscious or unconscious, like they move in a group, kind of. So the way they look at it, not really anybody anymore nowadays, but the way it's been looked at in the past is that your what are now called unconscious functions are really focused on understanding and controlling the organism that's has these functions, whereas the functions that are above, like these can be like these can be static, or like static in socionics corresponds to revisor, and dynamic corresponds to conductor. So if you have static, conscious, or mental functions, that means that what was I saying? That means that you're focused on like the static aspects of the external world and the dynamic aspects of the internal world. So because that's another way to interpret what's going on, because it might not be, because I mentioned this last time that I'm trying to understand two things. I'm trying to understand, like, first off, why am I so introspective? It's kind of like a meta introspective question. Like, why is it that I'm introspective?
Right.
And then also, why am I so uncertain? And it might be that like I'm in a introspective place, but I'm not necessarily introspection. Like it might be that everybody can get introspective, and it's not really a function that, or a specific cognitive function that does that. You know, it might just be that if you have, let's say, introverted thinking, extroverted intuition, like in the lower part in the vital loop, then maybe you're going to be more introspective in this certain way when you get introspective. But it might be that you're supposed to be more, because in sociology, like the ego is like I think it's supposed to be kind of like your optimal space mentally. So
what is I forgot. So what is the ego and
the ego is I didn't mention that. The ego is like the top of the conscious function. So
okay.
Yeah, it's like
a
2x4. It's like a 2x4 tower. You've got like ego, superid, id.
Okay.
Top two are conscious or mental. Bottom two are unconscious or vital. And in some texts I've come across regarding socionics, that bottom part is about understanding and controlling yourself, and the top part's about understanding and controlling the world. And depending on the functions, you're going to do the function locations within the stack are going to do these things in different ways. So that's another way to look at it, I guess, is that it might just be like I'm in an introverted space, but everybody can be in this introverted space. But it does kind of fall apart to an extent, as far as I can tell, because if you have, because I don't see how I could be this introspective, like spend a lot of time, the amount of time I do in this place, if it's not some sort of natural or energetically favorable state to be in.
I think I understand your question now, because so what you're trying to find out is why you're so introspective. Like
that's one of the the cause or whatever, what it is or whatever, you know.
And by cause you mean just whether it's a function, or it's your personality, or how different you are from other people, whether it's normal or not.
I'm not really concerned if it's normal or not. I just want to know why or what it is. What is this introspection? Why am I introspective? Kind of just I want to.
So why? So okay, when you say why, what comes up to my mind is like, what's the point of it? Like, not just the cause, but the end, the telos. Like, what is it leading to? Is that what you mean by why too?
By why I mean the actual, like, the precedent, like the cause. I would say a priori, whatever. I think it might be related to that. Might be. I'm not using the word right, but I think that might be a priori or posteriori. One of the two, maybe. I'm not sure. But it's like, what's the cause of this? Why is this happening? Not like, not necessarily, because that could be part of the answer, like the point of it. But I would say the curiosity is more about. Like, why am I doing this? And by why, I mean, what is causing this to happen? I guess that's what I mean by why, I think.
I see. So, and you don't have an answer for it in this introspection itself, right?
Right. I have like a bunch of different ways I can interpret it. I don't know which one is most accurate or most plausible.
That's interesting. For me, it's interesting because I've always been introspective, right? Like, so it's like I don't even question it. I was just like born that way.
Yeah, it definitely is something that turned on for me in the last few years.
So it could also be. So it doesn't have to be a function, right? It could also be an experience. It could be.
Could be temporary.
An emotion. It could be temporary.
Yeah. But by introspective, I mean curious about myself, not necessarily like just thinking about stuff inside my head. I think it's like a distinction that some people miss or don't make, I suppose, just to clarify.
Right. And let's make a distinction with the self too, right? So by saying you're introspective, you're introspective about yourself, and what about the self? Is it your inner self, like your heart, your world, your inner world, or yourself, like your outside, what people see outside from you, like what we talked about earlier?
I think in Jungian terms, that might be like the difference between like the self and the persona.
Yeah, the self and the persona.
I think I'm more talking about the self than the persona. But it's really just how my mind works. How do I work? Why do I do what I do? You know, that's kind of like what causes me to act when I act. You know,
right? Because for me, those are. I mean, I'm trying to get like really like a fine distinction, right? So when you say yourself, you don't equate that to you qualify it even more to just your mind, right?
Yeah, I'm not really concerned with like how my arms work, or like I understand that pretty well. Actually,
Well, for me, that's still external. What I mean is, because there's a self where it's your inner being, like your sense of existence, your soul,
sure. Yeah, I think I get what you're saying.
or just whatever, like very localized, specific, whatever goes in my mind.
Yeah, but it's also like behavior. It's not just like.
But behavior is also like, I mean,
it's physical.
Your mind and your brain. Then your mind and your brain.
Yeah, like what I do physically, like what I spend my time doing, and also what I spend my time thinking about.
Yeah.
So it's like both. It's like a behavioral question, really. Like
right.
What causes what causes me to, or what makes me act the way I do? What causes myself? I can't even think of the correct way to phrase this in English. Like, what's the correct way?
Do you speak a second language?
No, I just said that, but I think it's a good. I mean, it was kind of like an unnecessary distinction. I don't really speak another language.
But maybe it's that awareness thing, huh? That where you're like you have a sense of the meaning, but you're trying to articulate it.
Yeah,
words, right?
that's kind. Yeah. But I don't. But like, I'm very unaware. I couldn't even describe. Maybe that's part of it. It's like I'm not focused on the thing that's behind it. I'm focused on the actual articulation of what it is.
Right.
I'm not focused on
Right,
like
and that's
what's,
what you said. And that's
yeah,
what you said. Can't put into English.
yeah.
It's hard to put into. Yeah. Um, well, okay. So this is getting more distinct for me. So you're focused more on the reason you do things behaviorally, and that includes your mind and your brain. Um, and do you see yourself as distinct from other people? Like my brain is my brain, my mind is my mind. It's different from everybody else's.
Yeah, it's like, well, actually, maybe not, because I don't think I thought about that yet. Because I'm not trying to figure out like how I work as a human among
Right,
other humans. Like I'm not trying to figure out like how does memory work? Everybody remembers.
right.
Like, memory works
And
for
that's what I was
everybody.
trying.
Right. It's like what is about this. It's the stuff that it's like idiosyncratic. Not idiosyncratic. It's I don't know. I don't know another way to describe it. As like personal behaviors, like subjective behaviors.
Right,
You
right.
know what
Yeah,
I
that's what I
do.
was trying to make another distinction.
Yeah.
So you're focused on the parts that make you distinct from other people because I mean, you obviously share the same anatomy and stuff like that
Yeah.
with other people. So you're focused on what makes you different, the
Right.
behaviors that make you different. Why do I do this, but Adrian does something else?
Right, but I don't really take other people. It's not really a. I'm not really. It's not a comparison for me. I'm
Right.
not like comparing myself to other people. It's I'm looking at myself as an isolated object. This is kind of something that maybe related to how sociologists talks about like objects versus relationships for extroverted versus introverted functions or information elements in
Right, right,
sociology.
right. But by other people, I just meant not relationships, but just the objects, because you are an object
Right, I'm
that is
understanding myself
classified under a
as a specific object, I guess. But I'm
specific
not.
object.
I'm not.
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
really not even taking into account like what like I'm not really thinking about. I'm not saying this right though. The motivation isn't to distinguish myself from other people. That's not where the motivation comes from. The
No, that's
motivation.
already a priori. It seems like that's already a given
Okay,
because
I guess as long as that's clear.
right, because I mean, you do see yourself as that, right? Because if you see yourself as as a specific object, as an isolated brain and mind, um, then you are distinguishing yourself from other people.
Well, I'm not doing it. Yes, I would say that I'm doing that, but I'm not doing it consciously.
Right, right,
Like it's not part of my. It's not a motivation. It's not part of like the why that I'm aware of in terms of why
right,
I do it.
right.
Like yeah, I'm doing that. Like I'm picking myself out from other people because like I'm more interesting to myself, I guess, than just universal processes in general. Um,
So then I would say, what is a specific motivation or a specific something that's in your mind and your brain that you're trying to understand the reason that you do it? Is
it's
it a
not.
complex of things? Is it a specific thing?
It's not. It's just me as a. It's just everything about me. I think. I guess
Ooh, well, that's a lot.
it is a lot. Um, but it's just like I guess kind of what I'm. I guess I think how my mind works is a pretty close to it. Like yeah, it's just like how my mind works, and I think that's a specific, not the mind, right? I'd say you're more
Right,
interested
right.
in how the mind works. I think I'm more
Yes,
interested in how
exactly.
my mind works. I think that's a good distinction.
Right.
I'd
Okay.
say
Well,
that's
I think we're getting somewhere because then I would say, is this an answer only you can answer, or is this something that someone else can answer?
it's something I think anybody can answer, but it needs to like get through to me at some point.
Okay, so you think
Like somebody could like give me some information, like they could like I don't know, I've been typed by a bunch of people. Like potentially one of these people could have said like, "Hey, you're this type. This is how your mind works," and I could have been like, "That makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. I do this. I don't do this. Yep, this all adds up."
and then the question's answered. That's it.
Yeah, that
Oh,
could have
interesting.
happened, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I don't really have a necessary source that the answer needs to come from.
Right. And I guess another question that comes up is, so the people that have typed you, well, let's take it even further, right? Like, so does type itself, do you think typology answers some of your questions or most of your questions about yourself?
Different typologies try to answer different questions.
Right. So they're all
Some of them,
capturing an
some of them.
aspect of it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all making sense to me now. So that's why you do the spreadsheet.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Because it's a way of extracting out. I mean, the spreadsheet is a bit. The spreadsheet actually doesn't. It gives you like it'll get like theoretically it gives you like your 4 letters or whatever type out of 16 you are, or you might or whatever type that everybody else spat out that's most consistent, I guess, to put it somewhat poorly. Yeah, it doesn't really tell you what what that means though. It could tell you like, oh, you're a and it would use socionics kind of it would use socionics terms. It would like you're a introverted, intuitive, thinking, perceiving type, for example.
Right.
But it doesn't tell you what each of those letters means. It can only tell you what the kind of the aggregate. It's not really an aggregate, but it tells you kind of what the aggregate is.
Well, also too, like all these systems have qualifiers and mechanics, like the way that things in the system work together. So it gets even more difficult too if you're comparing different systems.
I mean, you have to kind of make a couple assumptions. You have to make the assumption that it's not really an assumption, but you have to kind of consider that, like, okay, it's kind of like where do you want to? It's kind of like choosing where you want to start. Like you can say everybody's using these same terms. Everybody's using introverted, extroverted, intuitive, sensing, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving. And you can assume, you have to make some assumptions to say like, okay, when they say J, are they talking about a J lead or a extroverted judger type? You know, you got to make some guesses there, or you can just work with the first 3 because those are pretty consistent. You can kind of say like, well, I think everybody's kind of. I mean, no, the code kind of still works that way because it's like, I mean, the spreadsheet, I guess, just not to get too deep into it, but it would work in the sense that it's just like you could do it with like 2. Like I think I sent you a message about it. You could do it with like just a dichotomy, like
Right.
if ever like let's say you have I'm trying to do the numbers. I'll just do it like this. Like the odds of 2 people independently typing somebody the same dichotomy is 50%. 8 people is 25, 4 is 12.5, 5 is 6.25. Then when you get 6, it's like 3 is about 3%, which is less than 0.05, which is the usual threshold for like statistical p-values, I guess.
Right.
Say it. So once you get 6 people with that single dichotomy, then you have like, okay, I guess if these people, like first off, if they weren't talking about the same dimension, then the odds are it would be like all over the place. But if it's all the same, like the odds of that happening randomly are pretty low. So I think it's kind of I don't think it's really mental gymnastics. I think it does make sense, but that's essentially how the spreadsheet works with the dichotomies.
So is the answer that you're looking for, is it only in typology that you think?
Not necessarily.
Necessarily.
Yeah.
Because I would say typology it deals with people at a general level, right? Like it's a typology. It's categorizing patterns of people in general, so that it's kind of like using a tool that, like using a ruler that measures inches, and you're trying to measure like nanometers.
Right. I'm not sure. But like the response out of that is like, is it actually a categorization scheme, or is it actually because a cognitive
For yourself. For
no
typology,
typology in
or
general,
for
typology, is it really a categorization
okay.
scheme? Because I'm not sure. No, I don't think everybody is using it as a taxonomy. I think a lot of people are using it like, it's hard to, because like if these, for using CT for as an example, if these signals are clustering, like,
Right.
and
There's
they occur to the exclusion of the other side of the spectrum, I guess, then is that really a taxonomy, or is that just like we're seeing something that doesn't, we're seeing like something that is in a relationship with something else, but these two things don't occur at the same time? Like, it's not necessary. I don't know if it's necessarily just a taxonomy. It might be, but I'm not sure.
Well, with the signals themselves, is definitely not just a taxonomy. I
Yeah.
think you're right about that. But clustering the signals
Yes.
into
Yes.
that's a taxonomy. But yeah, I think even Auburn in his introduction video mentions that every person has their own unique signature, right? Not just the clusters of signals that you meet all these people who have the same cluster of signals as you, but that every person has their own pattern of the way the way they talk, the way they do signals or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're right about that. If we're just talking about signals, yes,
Yeah.
but
The aggregation of them is where you're saying the taxonomy bit comes in.
right, exactly. So would that would your personal signature of signals, let's say you do a 10-minute video or an hour video every day, and your signals are aggregated over that time, that will give you your own pattern, your own signals, like what signals are clustering compared to you, not compared to other people. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure. I think I'm a bit stuck on that because you said that it'd be like for you. I'm not entirely clear, I think.
So currently, the way CT, the tautology code, is done is that the signals appear in every person, right? Not in every person, but in every type. Like there's cluster of signals, and these cluster of signals happen in other people at the exclusion of other people, and that's a type. So what I said to you is that
Oh, I see what you're saying a bit.
if you compare the videos just to yourself, a video after video after video after video, and seeing the signals that cluster just to you,
Mm-hmm.
then you would get a personal signature. Then you would get what is, but just on signals themselves. Like
This is as
let's say
opposed to getting what?
a type that because then you're comparing it to other people.
Maybe I'm not clear on the point you're trying to make at this point, at this
Uh,
instance, I guess.
because if you're trying to avoid a taxonomy, for example, or typology, that would be one way to avoid it, because then the information would be looped only to you. You would get a cluster of signals that happen based on your just frequent videos, just your daily life, how you talk,
And you're
how
saying
you
that would be,
process.
and you're saying
Because
that would be
they
better than doing a spreadsheet?
yes, because if you're trying to find out processing, like let's say you're just trying to figure out how your brain processes information, just yours specifically,
Sure.
not typologically, um, then that would be a way to do it. It would just be a unique uh, cluster of signals that only happen to you. You would know over a week how you process information. Does that make sense?
I
It
think
wouldn't.
so.
It would.
So you're saying that like it would be advantageous or something to kind of get a bunch of videos of myself for like, let's say 10 minutes over like the course of a month or something, to get like some sort of, that would be like a good baseline or something for SeTi.
Exactly. If we're just talking about SeTi, if we're talking about SeTi and signals, and if we take those signals to mean what they mean in the definitions, like, oh, like looking down, that means the person is trying to form an idea in their mind or something like that. Like, so if you even had like a computer that was able to analyze your movements, and an EEG, like let's just put all of them together, like an EEG, um, a way
fMRI or whatever, just everything.
right, everything, way to measure your emotions, also, like
Yeah.
everything that's included in your mind and your brain. You would get information about yourself over a long period of time, right? And that would be a data set that would be about you and you only.
Yeah.
And some kind of pattern and information you could gather from that. Like maybe you figure out that.
Oh, I think I see what you're saying, because like if I'm not necessarily aiming to compare myself to other people,
Exactly.
then I should just look at, right. I mean, yeah, that's how I would do it if I had those sorts of tools available. But I don't think, like, if typology isn't a taxonomy and it's actually looking at cognitive processes, I guess.
And you're talking about all the different typologies, right? Like not just SeTi.
Well, I'm talking about like whatever all these different typologies are looking at in truth. Like if what Carl Jung first noticed, if what all these other people have noticed now and are noticing now, if that stuff is not, because I think Jung used it as he described it as a compass. So you have to kind of hope that he was like a bit wrong with that, and that it's actually like something neurological, you know. Maybe that's not necessarily a contradiction, but if it is, oh, now I kind of lost track because I went on that tangent. But I think I was saying something that, like, typology is supposed, like, hopefully typology, right? Hopefully typology is not a taxonomy, and it's actually just observing, like, kind of not like different actual types of people, which might not be the case. It might just be a taxonomy.
Well, I think it's both, though. I think it starts with the assumption that cognitive processes are different. People have different. That people process information, right? Starts off with that assumption. People process information, and it's not just like there's a structure there for the information to be processed. I think that's like the most basic assumption that it starts with. Because without a structure, then everyone is just like a blank mind, that just adapts to the world, and the world you are molded by the world, and that's
blank slate. Yeah,
right.
That's the idea of a blank slate, I think.
At that point, there is no typology. It doesn't even make sense to make a typology because it's all very local.
Yeah, it's all nurture and no nature.
Exactly. So with cognitive processes, it starts at least with that structure. And then it starts trying to figure out, well, what is the structure, right? If there is a structure, there's one structure, not if there's one structure or if there's many structures. And I think out of experience with Jung is that there's obviously different structures that people consciously or not process information differently because of that structure that's there.
I mean, yeah, that's evident in our conversations that we've had so far.
Exactly. So at that point, that's when I don't think you can't say there is no taxonomy. At that point, there is a taxonomy because there's already different structures. It's not like, oh, the human mind, everyone has the same structure. It's like, as long as there's a dichotomy, there's already a typology.
Yeah, I think we might be understanding the word taxonomy a bit differently, because for me, taxonomy is like, it's like a categorization almost, like Democrat or Republican,
And that's
or
not
conservative or liberal. That's what I was saying. I think we're conceptualizing it a bit differently.
So it's your idea of
Classification, categorization of something that, as opposed to an observation, because I wouldn't say,
I see.
I wouldn't say that like I am classified as this type. It's more like I am this type, or I am this type of person, or I have these cognitive functions, as opposed to saying.
Let me try to understand that. So you see a difference between classification, as in, for you tie that to observation, or
I would like separate that from observation.
Oh, separate it from observation.
Yeah, which I don't know if that's even, quantum mechanics might be mad at me for that, but whatever. It's how my mind works.
Yeah, this just got complicated in my mind. So if you okay, so you're saying that, let's say there's just two structures, right, that exist in the mind. There's two dichotomies. It's only me and you, right? We already noticed that there's some differences between us, how we process information. So a taxonomy for you would be that your structure is blue, my structure is red. But a typology is, your structure is structured this way, my structure is structured this way.
I would say those are both observational. Both those examples you gave. I think because I think I associate classifications or categories with kind of being somewhat, I mean, maybe they're useful, but they're somewhat inaccurate, because like species of animals, for example, and like the genus, family, that whole classification scheme. I guess, I think, oh, this is a better one. Like living organisms, like what's alive? Where's the line there? It's not really a clear line, because if you look at the definition of life, there's like 7 somewhat arbitrary characteristics.
I see.
So it's like, that's a classification, as opposed to saying like what's actually there. Well, there's a lot of carbon, and there's like a lot of whatever, however carbon specific chemistry works. There's just, there's like, I don't like that's why it's such a hard question to answer what life is, but I'd say that, as if you're just observing what's there, as opposed to saying.
I see. So for you, classification is subjective. It's the observer making a statement about the observation, instead of just the observation being some objective data point.
I think that's pretty close to it, yeah. Okay. That's pretty close.
So let me see if I could untie this. So okay, so at oh, hold on. Okay, someone was calling. So at this point, let's say we notice differences between us, right? And at that point, what would you call that? Just an observation, a data point?
Yeah, observation.
But
observation.
But in the observation, we already classified it, right? Like your thought is linguistic, my thought is not linguistic. That's already a classification.
Yeah, it's verbal. It's a verbal classification, but we're not saying that like, we're not, right. This is the distinction. We're not saying like, oh, I'm a verbal, you're a visual, or something like that. That would be a classification. We're not like saying like, okay, that observation is like the reality. That this, like, there's something deeper there that we're trying to get to. We're not just saying like, oh, it's just like a race, I think, might be another good example. Like race is not a very good classification signal because like there's like it's fluid. You know, people. I don't mean that like people identifying as different races. I mean like two people from different races having a kid and like what race is that person? Like that type of thing.
I think I would say though that it starts with that classification though, even if it's not your verbal visual. Like there's still a classification in that we're making that a distinction.
Yes, there's still a
Like maybe it's
classification
not.
that happens, but it's not on. It's a classification of the
We're
data,
not
but
saying
not
it
of the
ends there,
whole
though.
system.
Right.
The distinction I was making is like you can say like, okay, this person thinks in words, this person thinks not in words or in images or in ideas or whatever. Like that's an observation that uses classification, but you're not saying that the whole. When you're not putting that stamp on the whole system and thinking that that's the whole picture.
The whole system or the whole
Person.
by system you mean the person,
the
right?
individual,
Okay.
the individual. We're not saying
Okay,
that that's the
okay.
whole picture. That's all that there is to this, right?
Right, but you could do that just based on that.
Theoretically, you could, yes. Theoretically, you could, but the value of that, I think, is not necessarily evident.
Right. So I think I'm understanding you now. So you're trying to go into the mechanism, what's in the system, what's the whole system that we're just seeing this
Surface,
phenomenon,
yeah.
the surface phenomenon where you're verbal, I'm visual. And so but then that would take you, let's see, where could that even take you though? Let's see. I'm trying to see where does that go?
Sure. I'm trying to think of another example of like where it's been like
because then let's say you okay, we have knowledge of cognitive functions, right? Which are already distinctions in themselves. So if you say, oh, you're verbal because you don't have an eye, like the whole spectrum of an eye developed or something like that, and I have a higher spectrum of an eye or something like that, that's already another distinction, right? We're already using another classification for an eye.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily against classifications. I'm against like surface level classifications, I suppose.
Right. So then what you're really, really looking for is the mechanism.
Yep.
Behind it.
Yep.
So even when we talked about earlier, those where where if I said, oh, the thought experiment, like if we recorded your brain, recorded your emotion over long periods of time, you would get a pattern about you. But that's still classifications, right? Like the signals.
No, I think that's okay. That's okay because it's not.
For you, it's still just surface level observation.
That's okay, is what I'm saying. Like if we had like some sort of super study that went on that like kind of that. I mean, it's not even possible now, but like
I think it's possible.
Well, I mean, I don't because people would have done it already, right? They would like if you can map out how the brain produces different types of behaviors.
Right? Well, that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm hoping to do.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, I would say that there are limitations to like because like there's really just like there's like even with like different brain mapping technologies, there are like trade-offs. Like you have
exactly
like if you want to get like good spatial resolution, your temporal resolution is going to go down. Exactly. There's like that sort of relationship. And that's not necessarily that's not like a hard and fast rule, but like you can't really get the best of both worlds all the time.
Right. It's getting deeper into more than just you're verbal and visual, right? It's getting deeper than that, but it's still not. There's some trade-offs. You're still not getting the whole mechanism behind it.
Yeah, because people really don't know how the brain works yet. Like we don't have a good. Like we don't know where consciousness. Well, if looking at consciousness. We don't even know if we're looking at consciousness the right way because people have been like working on the hard problem, and some people say there is no hard problem. Some people think there is, and we just can't solve it. Some people say we just need to change our perspective. It's still like people are still trying to figure that stuff out. But in terms of like what I'm looking for in terms of why I do what I do, or how my mind, not really how my mind works. It's not even like that. It's how do I work? And it's about
your specific mind. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Your specific mind. Your
sure.
specific.
But it's not. I don't even know if it's just my mind, because it's not just like it's just like it's not, because I feel like that's limited to thought a bit.
Oh no,
Because I'm
no,
all
your brain and your mind.
my body,
The
like my activities, my you know, like myself.
right, but do you see your activities as coming from your brain and your mind? Because I mean,
I'm
I
not
guess you
sure.
would have to.
Yeah, I guess, but like that's not. I guess they do, but it's also just understanding where these things, why these things happen, and if it comes from my brain, if it comes from my mind, if there's even a distinction between the two, great. Or who cares? I guess might be a better thing to say. It's just whatever the reason is, whatever the mechanism is that you said earlier.
So do you see that as problematic? Like just on surfaces, right? If we're talking about layers of this mechanism.
You're saying like how deep do you go is kind of where you're going with this, maybe?
No, it's more like where is your knowledge now? Where do you see where you have not, I wouldn't say certain, but maybe that'll work. Where do you see the limit of your knowledge, where you say, well, this in terms based on this question, why do I do what I do? Where do you see your limit? Where does it stop? Where you know some things, and then after this, I don't know what the hell's going on, and that's what I'm trying to find
I
out.
know, like,
Do you
I think I understand your question. I think I would say that I see like the surface level observations that I have of myself, like my behaviors over time, my activities over time, like my thoughts over time, but I don't know why it is that these things manifest.
right? So what I'm asking is that layer, does it stop in your whole person, or does it stop in your your idea of a brain and a mind, or does it go bigger than that, like your your aura, your surrounding, or something? I don't know. Some people can say that it's not just the person, but also the whatever field they're creating, right, around
Your question
themselves.
is your question is where. I'm not sure I understand your question. I'll try and phrase it and see, and
Sure,
then we
sure,
can
sure.
try and go from there. You're asking where does it come from? You're asking where does it end?
Yeah, for
Or
you, like in your quest to answer this question.
what type of answer am I looking for?
No. What resolution is it at right now?
I thought, I was saying, I thought I was saying that it was just at the resolution of just observations of just patterns of what I observe in myself in terms of thoughts and behavior. That's the
But that's
resolution.
what I mean. What's I'm talking about the self, not the observation, but at what point is
Oh,
the
I don't have
self?
any. I don't think I have that level of any good level of resolution of that at this point. I just have.
Because yourself, because that's what I was asking. Because yourself could be your brain, just your brain, and then whatever's in the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be your whole person, like as like your human body, or it could be your human body plus other things, like yeah, just your human body and your aura, if you want to. Some
Yeah,
people can
maybe.
include
Yeah.
that. So at what point is the question being questioned at, like at the level of your whole human body, at the level of your brain?
I don't think that's defined for me. I
Oh,
don't think it
well,
goes to that.
that's where I would start.
Hmm.
because because that's where I would start, because the data is so vast, right? The data is so vast, depending on how what the scale is. Um,
Oh, so maybe scale. I think I can answer scale. It's the system that is me. I guess is that kind of answering it a bit.
no, because system is abstract. So it's an abstract thing.
So you're asking about like the physical constraints.
No, I'm asking, when you say system of me, what is the system?
Like like I guess sure. I guess just the confines of my body, I guess.
Okay, so it's your human body.
But it
Now, I'm not saying you. I mean, I'm just saying your flesh, your everything that confines you, that you take up space.
yeah, that's the limit that I'm imposing on the investigation I'm conducting.
I see. I
It's
see.
this person here.
Yeah, then I think it's possible. I think it would be possible to answer that,
Like,
but I don't think it would just. I don't think it would just be typology.
but you're saying right now you think it's possible to answer that question with neuroscience?
No, no, no. I think it's possible to formulate the question and to take actionable steps. Not saying that it will end, that the question would be answered today, but that you could take actionable steps to begin the process of answering the question. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
I think so.
Because you're confining it to a certain space, right? Once you have a boundary, then you can start asking more specific questions and figuring out how to answer them.
Yeah, like the two questions I have at this point, like I've said, are just the like why is it that I'm kind of involved in this investigation in the first place, and also like why is this nagging doubt that I'm dealing with a lot present. I guess that's kind of like the two more specific things that I'm trying to answer. And that's like I think this I mentioned this last time. Like that's the standard kind of that's a standard that I evaluate different typology theories by is by like how well do they answer both of these questions.
Um, how has it been answered for you so far? What do you?
I mean, different theories have different answers. Some theories have more than others. I think personality. I think I might have. I don't know if I mentioned this last time. Personality junkie comes pretty close because yeah, I did mention this last time because I think they might come the closest because they would conceptualize the desire for self-knowledge as characteristic of an introvert and the nagging doubt as characteristic of a perceiver. So that would make me an IP in their system. But then it gets more complicated because they also take into account like life stages. They would actually say, well, like extroverts start out extroverted, get a bit more introverted, and then like in phase 2, as they call it, which happens about like adolescence to like early 20s something, and then introverts get more extroverted around that time. And what happened for me is I got more introverted around that time. So then that gets kind of complicated. But they also say stuff that's like, well, in the first half of life, then, you know, introverts are generally speaking more interested in self-knowledge than extroverts. So I could go on in like the different ways I've investigated it and different
It
theories,
seems like
perspectives.
it seems unsatisfactory though, because I think I understand what you're looking for, and all of this is very very unsatisfactory for the kind of knowledge that you're looking for, the kind of response answer that you're looking for, because yeah, it's fine to use these typologies and systems that are extracted from general people, right? And you also got to remember that they're theories, right? So it's like doubly, triply removed from you. It's like so many layers removed from you, from your actual self. Um, I think the only way I would see this being answered for you is to study yourself, basically, to study yourself, keeping these typologies and theories in mind. But in the end, it seems like you got to come up with your own theory about yourself.
Well, yeah, I guess that's an option. Um, yeah. Um, I would say that what I've been doing thus far is kind of. I think I'm conceptualizing these typologies a bit differently than you do as well, because I'm
Oh, well, really? Maybe, possibly, yes.
yeah, because I think that I conceptualize them more as like not necessarily physical theories, but it's like kind of closer to that. You know, it's
Mm.
closer to like.
Yeah, I definitely didn't connect them to physical theories.
Well, I'm not.
Like,
Yeah. Anything that these typologies are noticing should be in some way, shape, or form manifested in somebody's neuroscience or their brain or their nervous system. And even if they're not talking about it like that, then there should be some physical. Because if you're watching a physical system do certain things over time and you're drawing conclusions from that, and if they're accurate, then they should be present inside the physical system at some level of organization,
right.
genetically, at like a brain connectivity wise, something.
No, I think I agree with you there. But where I see the disconnect is that it's a theory and it'll have some physical basis, right? It'll have a physical basis that'll be explained. But the theory is not a physical theory. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's not a theory of like atoms or something like that, but it is. I don't know, because it's a theory of behavior, at least in the
Right.
way I'm kind of looking at it, the way what I'm looking for in it.
But not just external behavior. It's
Right, not just external behavior. I would
right,
agree.
right. So I would say that the theory has some basis in a physical theory, but it's not a physical theory in itself, because there's just so much disconnect.
Yeah,
It's
they're not. Yeah,
extracting.
no typology is talking about like the structure of the brain. So yeah.
Right, right. So that's what I meant by how we see them differently, because I see them as theories of phenomena that come out of physical processes, right?
Like evolution.
Right. But it's just seeing the resolution is so low. It's like 16 pixels, if that makes sense. It's like it's
Right. So
seeing
maybe
the
what you're saying is that I'm using like the theory of evolution in order to understand how the stomach digests bread or something like that.
yes.
Is that a good analogy?
I think that's a good analogy, because it seems like you're trying to get to how does the stomach digest bread, but you're using the theory of evolution to understand it.
Right.
And it has some insights, right? It has some basis for it.
It's going to give you some information on how the
It
stomach
gives you some
digests bread.
information, exactly, but
Not as much as opening up like a gastroenterology book, something like that.
right, or looking at it yourself, or suffering it yourself, and figuring out your own theory of how that works. Because I think you said this before, that you do see layers of systems, right? Systems get bigger, and you could zoom in on more specific systems.
I think so. I mean, I think that's something I would say. Sure.
I think you said it. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, I think that's another way to see this problem, because for me there's so much information that's missing, and that's the information that I'm trying to get. That's the information that, but obviously I'm doing it in a general sense.
Mhm.
So if a system, so in this analogy, let's keep using this analogy. So there's the theory of evolution, right? And that system covers most life forms. Like, it's not just human beings, it's like life forms in general.
Sure.
So then it goes into other systems like humans, and then there's a system of human stomachs, and then there's the system of you, and then the system of your stomach. Does that make sense? So there's like
Yeah.
cascading
I think I get what you're
all
saying.
these systems down.
Yeah.
So to find out your specific system and how it works, I think it would take not just a physical theory in general, which is what I'm looking for, but one that could be extracted out of you specifically. And that's why I made the thought experiment of capturing all this data about you. But that wouldn't even be enough because, like I said, it's still just on the surface. Like it's deeper than typology and those systems, but it would just be observations using other classifications, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I think that I guess the way the reason I've used typology as a tool in order to try to understand myself is because
it's the only thing
I'm looking.
available.
It's the only thing available, and the way I feel like it should cover the major differences between people if it's correct,
Yes, I agree with that.
right? And I'm not necessarily looking for like why am I right-handed. Um, it's more. I think it's more larger, more zoomed out than that. I'm not sure it's I'm not sure that it's my questions are too specific to typology because I found answers to them, but they just kind of like or people that have made observations about the stuff I'm talking about. But I haven't really found like an answer that's consistent enough for me, I guess, or not consistent enough, but that's consistent with itself, or an explanation that's consistent with itself enough, I guess, if that makes sense. Something like that.
Well, I think in the end we're both searching for the same thing, right? Because we're both using the same avenues.
We're using the
Like
same tools, but I think we're trying to get to slightly different places.
Yes. Well, yes, but we're using the same tools because,
Yeah.
like for example, the brain imaging session that I had with Nardi, that was my specific brain. So I was able to see, I was able to connect the okay, well, if CT theory and what I'm typed as there, and then the brain scan, and then how I'm compared to other people there, and the networks that connect. Like that's something more deeper than just CT, which is what I was trying to say in the post. Like it's giving me more information about my brain and my psyche uh, that goes deeper and closer to me, right? And the way I extrapolate is that okay, well, this can be used for other people, obviously, but I think in the end, your question would be able to be answered if I could let's say you made a decision, right? And I would be able to map out for you, this is why you made this decision. That would give you insight into why do I do what I do, why do I think what I think,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. Like if I could map out to you not just the network of brain regions that you used, but the actual activity and the actual meaning of the activity, right?
Like how it was represented in my mind at the time, almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I even had a vision about this at some point. I had a vision that I think I was thinking about a movie, but it was like involved with something else. I had a vision of being able to capture brain states so that they're replayable, right? So let's say you did something. Let's say we can capture your brain for a week. Um, I would be able to play it back to you, or even more than that, kind of like how we watch videos. I would be able to play that back in myself, like see things through your eyes, do the things that you do. Do you see what I mean?
I think I understand.
So I think in some way. I mean, if it's idealized in my mind, I feel like it's possible. But maybe that would give you even more in-depth answers to your question. I think in the end, the question can't be answered. From my point of view, I don't think it can be answered. Because I feel like it delves into deeper unknowns, deeper things that we don't know about life and the universe and stuff like that. Because it depends how deep you want to go with this question, right?
Yeah, I think I think typology goes deep enough for me, in theory, if it could be done correctly. If it is being done correctly, I think that would be deep enough. Yeah, like I'm not looking for like there's like levels of analysis, I guess. Oh yeah, now, this is another thing I learned about in my university studies. There's levels of analysis, so there's like I'm just gonna look it up real quick. I think it's kind of relevant.
Sure.
So it won't take too long. I even know the guy who came up with them. not know him personally, but I know his name.
Right.
That was
I understood.
that was a bit ambiguous. Here we go.
So he's my classmate.
Not quite. So it's Mars level of analysis. There's like, I'm just gonna go straight to the wiki. He was a neuroscientist guy. There's like computational level, algorithmic level, implementation level. So computation level, what does the system do? And similarly, why does it do those things? That's like interesting. And here's where I stop.
What does
And
the
you're like,
system do? What was that? What does the system do? Why does it do
what
those
does the system do? And similarly, why does it do these things?
And what's that level of analysis?
Computational.
Computation, okay.
Algorithmic. How does the system do what it does specifically? What representations does it use, and what processes does it employ to build and manipulate the representations? Like, I mean, there's 3 of them, I guess, so this isn't super significant. But even at the second one, I'm like, I don't really care.
Right, you care about the first one.
Computational. Yeah, and then even below that is implementational physical level. How is the system physically realized? Yeah. Like I'm not super interested in that either. It's just computational. So I don't think it goes like too deep because like if I'm looking at those levels of analysis, I'm like, well, and I think those levels of analysis make pretty good sense. I'm interested at the computational level, and like below that, like not that interested anymore.
Right. But don't you think that reaching a certain level of analysis would warrant you to keep going? Like you would be.
I wouldn't see that happening actually. I don't think. Once I got to a certain level, I'd start trying to apply it in real life.
Okay, so I think I got it. I think I finally have like a full grasp of it, and I think based on what you want, I think it's possible. I think you're not really asking for much. I think the next question then would be, so what? Or my question would be, so what is the point of it? Like, what are you trying to achieve with this information?
Yeah, I don't think I really have that. Yeah.
Is the desire itself kind of like part of the?
That's the question.
Itself is
that's
like
part of the question. Yeah, that's what I mentioned. Where it's kind of recursive. Or it's like a meta introspection.
Right.
Because I don't really. Yeah, I'm not even aware of that at this point. And I don't even think it's conscious or it could be conscious because I feel like any answer I got, like it's going to look like some sort of function that I have or function position that I have or state of mind that I'm in. And it's not going to be something that it's not going to be like, oh, I do this because I want this or it's not going to be like something on a conscious level, I don't think.
Right.
This is what I think though.
Well, you mentioned computational. Do you think it's going to be how should I put this? Do you think the answer is going to be something that is conceptual or something that is practical, that it's kind of like kind of all it's mapped out for you. You look at it and it's like, okay, well, this makes sense. Like everything makes sense. It's not conceptual where there's still questions, right? There's still meaning behind it or whatever.
Ideally, it
But
would
it's
be
all very
practical.
practical.
Ideally, it would be practical if that's how you're defining those two, I guess. I wasn't sure
Because
about the
then
distinction until you said something about. I wasn't sure about the distinction you were making until you said, like, is this something that's going to leave more questions or something that's going to be like, oh, I kind of see how this all works.
well, usually conceptual stuff leads to more questions because conceptual means interpretational usually, right? It's
Yeah, I think we have also like different understandings that we use that word differently. I think
For you, what is conceptual? This is very interesting.
conceptual is just like abstract for me, and by
Yeah,
abstract that means something that's not physical.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's why that's why I bet on that last part. Words, ideas.
Yours is more broader than, like, if I look at a chair, and I say that it's a chair, isn't that abstract? The fact that I said that it's a chair.
Chairs are the word chair is abstract,
right?
To me, yeah.
And it's also interpretational because I'm saying it's a chair.
Sure.
Like, okay, well, I think it's the same then. I think it's the same.
I'm not sure.
So far.
I'm not entirely sure.
Well, if everything, I mean, when you say physical, even that is a concept to me. Like,
it is, but it's like, I mean, stuff you can either visualize or like touch, or that's what I mean by physical.
Visualize,
like as in like I'm visualizing a 3-dimensional structure. I'm rotating it in my head. That type of thing.
That's abstract.
I would say that's more physical, even though it's not.
Oh man.
Because it's like it has dimension, it has space, it has size, and potentially color. I would say abstract is like I think abstract for me. I think I figured this out a while ago. Is more anything that's linguistic. That's how I define abstract. I think anything that you need a word to describe is abstract.
Right. For me, I mean, when you think of a cube, for example, because you say you can visualize the dimensions of a cube, for example, and that's physical, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's no such thing as a perfect cube. Like, I think that's what the ancients thought about. Like,
not in the real world. No, not in the real world.
Not in the real world. So do you
think, can graph one on a computer? I think, but
right. Do you think that is abstract or that's physical?
So yeah, it's physical. If you're coding, the code that you're writing is abstract, I would say. But I would say the picture that comes out is more physical. It's like,
oh wow.
And this is just my definition, but
right.
Not definition, but just how I use the word.
It's very interesting because I mean, for me, it's like most things are abstract for me. Like, so maybe that explains a lot. For me, practical and abstract are not different. Something could be abstract and practical. I usually see conceptual and abstract as different. So that cube in your mind, or in the computer software, is that conceptual, or is that?
I'd say in the computer software. I mean, well, let's go through each of the examples. In the computer software, I'd say it's physical because it's actually like an electrical. It's like on a subatomic level or whatever, or a circuit level. It's like electrical stuff moving. Like, however, I don't know how. I really don't know how like computers represent cubes inside of their software. But like whatever that is, it's still physical. I forget the other examples you were asking about. I think in my mind, if I'm visualizing a cube, I'd say that's physical because I'm not saying cube, and a cube is a 3-dimensional version of a square.
No, but
like that.
Well, I didn't ask if they were physical. It's more like, are they conceptual?
Oh, so this is different than physical abstract.
Abstract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Conceptual. I kind of equate abstract and conceptual.
I see. I see.
Those are kind of the same thing to me in terms of both being linguistic.
I think the way I would see it is that the cube in the computer is abstract, but the way it's being displayed, for example, is through physical processes. But I don't think it ends up being itself a physical thing, because you can't do things to it. You still need the software. You still need to use physical. Uh, you're still bounded by the physical parameters of the computer and how it works with the circuit board and the software to manipulate it.
Right. And I guess to that, I would say it's like you're pressing a bunch of buttons physically. That's causing a bunch of things physically to happen.
Right, but
That's all.
I can't take the cube outside. I can't. That's what I mean. It's bounded by limitations that are physical, that are still physical. There's physical limitations, and I guess the scale of the system would be a good way to think about it. But I wouldn't. I see the physical process of that cube. I see the process as physical, that makes up the cube, but the cube itself is not physical.
Yeah, I mean, this, like I said, it's just like different definitions. Because for me, like if you can see it, it's physical. If you can visualize it, like specifically or concretely, it's physical. If you need words, then it's just like we're just using the word. Like you needs words to describe it, it's abstract. That's the distinction I make.
Oh,
at least.
I see. I see. If you need words to describe it as abstract. But most things can be described by words, though.
So maybe that wasn't the correct. Like the words are abstract. The words are an abstraction. Not if you need words, but words are abstract. For me.
Interesting.
Because and it's just like, yeah, it's just they're one and the same. Abstract, linguistic, it's kind of like the same.
Because that's what you use for thought. Like that's how you, like, it's based on how you think, how you process information. Like,
I don't think that comes into it in terms of, why I equate the two, but that is true that like it's like we've said, I do think about stuff in words. So I wouldn't say that's why I equate the two, or that's why I say words are abstract.
Didn't you say a thought was physical though? I felt like you said that.
You remember the context? Maybe it's not ringing a bell for me.
Well, because I was asking you, I think we were talking about reason and existence, and I'm trying to remember. Definitely about reason and existence. You said that reason comes out of existence. There's no metaphysical world where reasoning outside of existence,
or consciousness kind of creates reality, that type of thing. Was that it?
No.
Or observes reality? No, maybe that was another conversation.
No, it was just, well, because we were connecting it to how, okay, there's physical sensations of uncomfortableness for morality, right? Like, I would be uncomfortable doing something. It's not a principle. It's just something I feel.
That was like with the different versions of feeling, right? Function.
Right. But this is connected to it, because then some people reason ethics, right? And they reason it from this idea that it's a principle that exists eternally over all time, right? It's a principle.
Sure.
And then there's this kind of morality that we were also talking about, where I said, oh, everyone knows what is good and bad. Like, they have an awareness of what is good and bad. Maybe they don't see it as a principle, the ethics, but it's like these like removed layers. And reason refers to the topmost one, because there's principles of ethics. And so I said, well, we were talking about, well, does this exist? And that led to reason. Like, where does reason exist? Does reason exist outside of us, out of existence, or does it exist after existence? Like, where does it exist?
Right. Yeah, reason. Maybe I would say now, and I probably would have said then that reason is something that people have, or
Right.
people create, or that comes with people or consciousness.
Right. So then that's when I asked you, do you think thoughts exist? Like, where did they exist? And I think you said that they were physical, because there's
Yeah,
a
and
physical.
right, I wasn't. Yeah, and by physical, I meant that they emerge. I could be wrong about this, but they emerge from a physical system, but they're not. They're
You
not
mean,
the
and by
physical
physical
system,
system,
because like
and
awareness.
by
I mean the brain. Yeah.
yeah.
And by physical, and so they're not like physical in the sense that they're. I mean, they kind of. I guess this is two different definitions, different ways I use physical, or maybe what's a better word? Yeah, I think I just use physical in like two different ways in this sense, because physical in one sense is the like your like the brain, which is a physical organ, but you also can have thoughts that are kind of physical thoughts in the sense of that they're about a object. Oh, I think there's like a thunderstorm or tornado warning going on.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I think I'm okay.
For now.
Yeah. If I need to do something, I'll get a text or whatever. I mean, this isn't like the first time this stuff has happened. I mean, in Michigan, you're in California, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Michigan, like, this is like you grow up with these types of things.
For hurricanes?
This is like a severe thunderstorm, or like
severe thunderstorm. Oh, okay.
that type of thing. Yeah, that's all that is. Pretty loud though. I was saying that like physical is like the brain, but it's also like you can have like spatial or physical thoughts in the sense of like about physical objects.
Right, but are the thoughts themselves physical?
Yeah, I'm using it in two different words. So they're physical in the sense that they arise from like physical processes.
I'm not talking about what
right. I think I see what you're saying. The thought.
Not.
Yeah. I just got a text
Oh.
about potentially, because our basement isn't very well insulated, so somebody, maybe might need to go down and check, make sure that there's no water down there. And if this is going on for a while, so if that happens, we can just cut the broadcast, or maybe I can do that and come back, or whatever. We'll figure it out. But physical, they're physical in the sense that, and it's hard for me to focus now because of the noise.
It's okay.
Yeah, the physical, like they're physical, like by physical, I mean, so in one sense, I would say no thoughts, they come from a physical place, but they aren't physical. They can be visual or spatial, maybe visual or spatial. Visual spatial, I think that's even a word. Visual, spatial, and abstract is a distinction, maybe, for me. Because visual spatial is like a thought that is about, I think I'm still answering your question. The visual spatial is a thought that is about like a physical object. Abstract or linguistic is like a word, but physical is more about, okay, the thing that's producing these things is a physical system, I would say, maybe, if that answers your question.
Right, and that's how I would characterize the computer. The computer is a physical system that, with the cube in there, it displays
a visual spatial.
Right, visual spatial that could be about something physical.
Yes, sure.
But I guess what I was asking more about the thought is that, do you think thoughts themselves, not what the thought is about, is physical?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're. Maybe abstract's the wrong word, because I mean I want to say that they're abstract, and by abstract in this sense I mean that they are like you can't grab them, I guess, physically. Like you can't, like I can grab this, but I can't grab a thought.
Yeah, for me, everything that you can grab, that's what I define as physical. Anything that you can like deconstruct
Or manipulate
by
with your hands, or manipulate
manipulate.
physically. Yeah.
Right, right. That's physical. Uh, but and within it, there's physical parts, right? The more you keep taking it apart, there's more physical parts, right?
Right.
But when it's constructed, that can be abstracted, right? When anything can be abstract is what I'm saying. There's a physical stuff that it's made of that can be taken apart.
Yeah, and then you
And
can
then
make a
there's
visual spatial representation of it in your mind.
right, and that's what I define as abstract. So when I say the cube is abstract for me because it doesn't exist in reality, that's what I mean. Like the cube
Okay. I
is
mean, I
the
can just,
visual.
yeah, I can change the way I use the words and say that like thoughts are either for me are either visual spatial or abstract.
Right.
And
Oh,
by
I see.
abstract I mean
Right.
linguistic.
Right. Right.
And then physical is like, actual objects.
Right. I
Yeah.
think I get it now.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's visual and spatial, those are physical properties, and that's why it's still physical, right?
Well, I don't know. This is getting kind of, because I'm thinking about like vision and not just visualization. If that's a bit of a distinction, I don't think there's too much of a distinction. I think if anything you can see. I think you're talking about stuff with mass. That's what you mean by physical.
Yes. Well, if it can be manipulated by your hands and stuff,
Or momentum,
then
or whatever you need to say in order for like photons to also be included in this equation, right?
right, exactly.
Yeah. Things that like physics, it's things that interact with like
Yes,
physical.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
And physical in the sense of like this is governed by the laws of physics.
Exactly. That's what I usually think of physical. Um, but this new idea of visual spatial, I mean, I think it's interesting because it has physical properties, right?
Yeah.
The visual and the spatial are physical properties. So why do I see them as not physical?
Well, I mean, it's just a difference in definition, right? Like, well, you said they have physical properties, and I don't think they do actually, because they aren't. They're just a picture in your head, visual spatial stuff. Your vision,
But
the
there's scale
objects.
though. There's
They're what?
they have. If I'm going by visual spatial, visual like spatial properties are real. So like I can think of a little cube and a big cube in my head, right?
Well, there's dimension, right? But dimension is an abstraction almost.
Oh, now I'm
Dimension.
confused.
Oh, okay. Well, dimension, like a dimension of an object, like that's something people make, right? It's not like an asteroid. An asteroid, sure, we can say it has dimension, but that's only because we're looking at it, right? Like dimensions in your head and images in your head, like they don't interact physically. Like I can imagine, I don't know, like the fact that I can imagine cubes aren't physical in your definition.
But what if I take the cube and draw it? Doesn't it become physical?
It's not really. I don't think for me, because what you've drawn, like that's just another representation, which I would say is also abstract. Because
What?
what you really did is you put a bunch of graphite molecules or graphite in a certain configuration on a piece of paper, and that's what the reality is, right?
I'm so confused though. How is the cube in the computer then physical?
Oh no, I would say it's visual spatial at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you changed it, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that. So now it's visual spatial then for you is more abstract than physical then still. Like it's in the domain of abstraction.
Well, I need to make another distinction because I'm calling.
Because you said
I need to make another distinction then because I should really just say visual spatial linguistic. Then I should say both of those are abstract.
Mm-hmm.
And then I should say anything that has mass or that is physical in the sense of the laws of physics is physical.
Oh, okay.
So I guess I would need to draw out that distinction there.
Right. Then I think we do have the same idea now then.
Yeah.
It was just that teasing out of the visual spatial.
Right. Because we're using the same word for two different things.
Right.
Both of us are using the same word for like two different things. But we're like your abstract thing was talking about a couple things. Mine physical thing, or yeah, I think we get it. But, yeah.
Cool. I mean, I think what we talked about, I think it helps me understand what you're looking for now. And did it give you a better idea of what you're looking for, or a better way to ask?
Go on.
Does it give you a better idea of what you're looking for, what you're asking? Kind of define the structure of the question more?
Well, remember for me, like the question only goes as deep as the actual verbal or linguistic representation.
Right.
And this is kind of something people have talked about with me. Like some people would say like, you need to like write down your thoughts so you know what they mean or whatever, or you need to write the stuff down that you're thinking about. It's like, I'm already thinking linguistically. So I would say that like all that stuff has already been pretty crystallized. I mean, it's a good exercise in conversation, but I would say that my understanding of it is still. I think it was solid before, and it's solid now, I would say.
Do you think? Well, I guess I said I don't think it can be answered yet.
Well, that was before, right? Before we kind of defined it a bit better, right?
Right. I still don't think it could be answered yet. I mean, I think it can be asked, and like there's it's more defined as you just said, but I don't think it can be answered today. But we both have questions, and we're both seeing the developments in cognitive typology, and by cognitive typology, I don't just mean SeTi, but in general,
sure. Yeah.
all the typologies, and seeing where it goes. And I'm hoping at some point to contribute to it at some point. So
yeah, me too. I think that's a good place to end. If we want to talk a bit more afterwards, I mean, at least by end, I mean stop the broadcast. I think that was like a good note to end on. And if we want to keep talking afterwards, we can do that. So, all right.
I think it's good to end the broadcast. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. All right. If you were tuning in, thanks for tuning in.